everybody out there in YouTube and Game Institute land. We're live from the broadcasting studios here at the Game Institute. And today we're going to be talking about actually two things: active quads and the follow active quads, or I should say a line and the follow active quads. And the model that I had to set this video up, my prep model, it works fine without follow active quads now. So I don't know if they changed something in this last version of Blender. But so what I did was I made a new model real quick, and we're going to have to kind of stumble through this, or at least a couple steps, because I don't know if they fixed it to the point that the unwrapping just works better, or if something happened with the data in my original model. I don't know. I had a model all set up that wrapped really badly, and then you just fixed it. But now my model just wraps well, unwraps well, no matter what I do. So magic, I guess. I don't know. They changed the version so much on these softwares that as soon as you prep for something, then it just gets changed in the next version. You find a workaround and everything changes. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to unwrap this real quick, because my little model here that was all set up is now not set up. So a few things about the model. I did take off the top and the bottom real quick, just because we're not going to use this model for anything, and I didn't want to deal with the those circular top and bottom pieces. It doesn't really come into play too much here. So a few things we have to do first. In object mode, we need to make sure the transforms are on. So rotation and scale. And this particular model, I don't think that would have applied to, but it's a good thing to do on every model. By the way, I just saw a video the other day, and it was oh no, I don't remember who it was by. It was by one of the guys that has a Blender channel I subscribe to, and he made a video about the top 5 things that newcomers do in Blender that doesn't work. It wasn't titled that, but something like 5 biggest fails in Blender for noobs or something. And every single one of them, they really were like the top 5 that I had the most problems with when I was learning Blender. The that stupid camera lock thing that I've disabled for a year now was one of them. There's a key, and locking your viewport. The viewport, separating the viewports, you know, this action here that you saw me stumble around with if you were watching at the beginning, which is just a bad piece of interface going on there. That how to get them back was the point, because everybody then wants to start splitting these up. And anyways, the double edges, or the loose edges, I guess Blender calls them, where you can basically just extrude edges off of vertices, which that's actually a really neat function in Blender once you figure out why it's there. But for newcomers or people coming from Max, Maya, Lightwave, Softimage, whatever, that one really threw me off. I must have had 100 extra vertices in every object I made at first. And then the doubling up of polygons on with all the different between the modifiers and the tools that basically just dump polygons on top of polygons if you're not undoing everything after you decide you don't want it. Anyways, it was fun to watch, because everything this guy hit was like my first 3 months of Blender. So just goes to show everybody goes through the same thing. All right, so now we can go over to edit mode. I'm just going to put a seam in this. Now remember, I don't have a top on this, so it doesn't really need anything fancy done to it. And we'll mark that seam. There we go. So if we grab all these now, and let's put real quick. Let's put live unwrap on. There we go. Okay. And we'll unwrap this guy. Okay. Well, that's similar to what I got before. We could still use this, but I thought that was going to be more distorted than it is. Let me do this real quick. What I'm looking at is, see how these are all lined up nice and straight, or pretty straight? A little bit of distortion here. It's not really distortion, it's because there's a bump there in my model. I want that to be more distorted. I actually want it to look a little bit more wrong than it does. Let's do this. Go over here, grab that, and let's tweak this guy a little bit here. Let's really distort this and see if we can't get it to map badly. It's fun that we're actually trying to make something map badly. There we go. So that's kind of like a lot of models I actually have, where the loops are nice and straight. Maybe it was originally straight, but that the UVs get screwed up. And let's give this another try now and see if this works. Like I said, I had the model all set up. I had like a little pipe piece, but then when I came back on with about 5 minutes before we went live, it mapped just fine. I've been doing a bunch of UV mapping all last night, all this morning, on a model. It has a bunch of pipes and hooks and poles and things on it, long bent objects. And I did notice when I was unwrapping it that Blender seems to do a much better job with these types of objects than it did back when I had planned this part of the class. And maybe we just remove this part of the class eventually, I don't know. Because it seems to do okay. If anything, they just get slightly bent. But let's see how this maps now. If I come over here, we'll grab everything. Now that's the mapping that we had. Let's see what we get if we remap this. So go back in here. Yeah. So that's more like what I was after. Was kind of this twisty-turny thing that you're going to get from an object like this. Now you might want it mapped like that. I mean, there's nothing. That's actually the correct mapping, by the way. It yeah, we'll go that way. It's the correct mapping. It's just that your object is distorted, so you get this type of thing. If you were to cut this object out of cardboard and recreate it, that's basically the shape you would need. So it bugs me it's going up and down. I'm going to move it this way because I'm used to working that way. There we go. So now let's see if we can get this straightened out. Now, Blender has a few tools to straighten these things with. I think there's UVs and it's under weld align. There's a bunch of these straighten and align tools here, but they only straighten the vertices to each other. They don't snap it all into nice straight rows. Now, I came over from Max before using Blender. Max has a really nice tool where you basically just select one edge and then hit this button and it just snaps them all into place. Now, you are distorting the texture, so some people wouldn't even want to do that. And with the way that texture mapping is going between PBR, the bigger map sizes that are allowable, and game engines these days, you don't really have to pack your UVs as much. So space, like this curved area here, isn't such a big deal that it used to be. That a lot of people just leave it this way. In fact, that's what I was doing with the model that I was working on this morning. For the most part, I just leave it slightly distorted. Well, it's actually correct. This is non-distorted, but it does take up more space because now we can't fit nice little straight edges right bottom up against each other. Again, that's not such a big deal like it used to be, but sometimes we want to hand paint a texture, say, that has to wrap perfectly around these edges. Like maybe we're painting in edgeware in Photoshop. Well, you don't really want to be following this little roller coaster of a bendy line here. You'd really rather have a straight line, so you could just hold down Shift in Photoshop and draw a straight line. That's probably why you would be trying to straighten out these UVs. So before we get into this, just remember that this bendy blobby thing here is the correct non-distorted UV mapping, or at least mostly non-distorted. I'm sure Blender's not doing a perfect job of mapping that. In fact, we can figure that out real quick. Let's see. If I select everything and hit Control V, if we see a lot of movement, yeah, see all that movement that just happened there? I just relaxed those UVs, and that's all this area here. This is basically cylindrically mapped. And so all that movement that you just saw relaxed those vertices. This is probably more non-distorted than it was. It's not gonna hurt anything the way we're gonna do this eventually anyways, but Control V just relaxes the vertices. One thing with Control V, and if there's a way to get away from this, I don't know what it is in Blender, because I don't know what to call it to look it up. But Blender stays within the bounds. See this area right in here? It stays within those boundaries when it relaxes the UVs, which is really nice because if you already have your object UV mapped, you can just hit that and it will relax your UVs without bleeding over into other elements or islands. Let me try that again. Let me see if it's over here in the controls. Yeah. Here's your choices. Yeah, it doesn't have a... I don't see anything. Yeah, if there's a control that would allow it to bleed out of its little boundaries, I would like to know what that is. Because something like this, I don't want it bunching up there on the edges. I'd rather it just bleeds outward and then I just rescale it. But I don't know what to call that. It's not pinning, but I don't know what that's called. That's one of those top 10 things in Blender I've been meaning to get around to figuring out. Well. If anybody knows, either email me or text me and at least tell me what it's called so I can look it up. Like element border relax or something like that. Border relax, maybe. UV border relax. I don't know. Anyways, back to what we're doing. So what we want to do is we want to straighten this out. Now, small print. The way I used to do this, like I mentioned, doesn't seem to work anymore because it UV maps it better than it did before. So I quickly looked up how to do this new route here. And we're going to give this a try. So if there's a little bit of silence in between here, it's me figuring this out. I think all I need to do, let's try this. All I need to do, let me save this real quick just in case I need to come back to this spot. I'll just save it to desktop. And we'll call this Cylinder 1. Spelled cylinder wrong, but that's okay. Is if we come in here with edges and we select these edges, And we make these I just went blank. We make these aligned. There you go. Yeah, aligned. Wrong align. If we align them to the right axis, there we go. And this one we align to the right axis. There we go. And this guy, same thing. I don't know if I can do two at a time. Never tried that. If we do two vertices, no, I don't think that's going to work. Go to align. This is X, and we'll align this one to X. So that we get one straight polygon. And then we go to polygon. We select that polygon. I don't know if I need to deselect these over here or not. Let's do that. Okay, we just get that one polygon aligned so that now Blender kind of can follow these edge loops out, and I believe it has to have the edge loops lined up so that there's an edge loop radiating out of each of those aligned edges so that it knows what to line up. And now, I don't know if I need all the polygons selected over here. Let's try this real quick. Let's grab all these and just leave that one there. And go to Mesh, UV Unwrap, follow Active Quad. And you get some choices here. And before I kind of had to just try these to figure out which one it was, but let's try length average. Yeah, there you go. So then it straightens all those. Now, for the Max people, that's the equivalent of the straighten tool in the UV editor. It's about 6 clicks more, but it works really well. As far as I can tell, these are pretty well sized properly to each other. Like this guy here is slightly bigger than this guy here, so same thing there. And if you're coming from Maya, it's the equivalent of the new tools that came with the new Maya interface where you can straighten and do this type of thing. Now in Maya, it's about 5 more clicks than this to get it to work. But Blender works really well. The trick is you just have to select that polygon and then go. If you don't have a polygon selected, by the way, it'll probably work here. Let's see. If I go here and say follow active quads, no, it worked. Let's try it this way. It's this way. This is when I couldn't get it to work. If I just don't have anything selected, let me undo this real quick. There we go. If I don't have anything selected, yeah, I think like that. Or if I have everything selected, I mean. And I go to UV Unwrap, follow active quads. Oh, it still worked. I wonder if that's now different, because that's what was throwing me before. I used to get an error that would say no active quad selected or something. And when I first started Blender, I was thinking, well, I've got active quads all over the place selected. See, it still worked, though. That's interesting. I don't quite know what the answer is there. Let's try this. Let's go to object mode real quick. Let me save this just so I've got it here. Okay. Let me hide this guy. Let's make a new object, but this time let's use under mesh. I've got some pipe objects. Yeah, here we go. Let's do a little pipe elbow. Yeah. And let's take this elbow, go into edit mode. By the way, this pipe Elmo, this pipe elbow comes in with the pipe objects. You can activate them through the script add-ons. Let's bevel this guy here. And let's make a slightly turned piece. Okay. So that should give us all sorts of issues with mapping. Let's apply our. We've got to be in object mode. Let's apply our rotation and scale just in case. Okay, this guy doesn't have any tops. We don't need to worry about that. Just extra time. Let's go into edit and let's go ahead and unwrap this. If you're familiar with it in unwrapping, if you want to see your unwrapping happening live, you can go to options and click that live unwrap, which I almost always have on. There are situations where it doesn't really help you, especially if you're trying to untangle UVs or vertices that aren't behaving. But I usually have live unwrap on. It's not on by default. Go back to tools. And go here. And let's just put a seam here. There we go. So let's mark that guy as a seam. All right, now if we select everything and go to mesh unwrap, there we go. See how that's all curvy? And that's because these kind of pipe-like objects are what are going to give your program the most trouble. And we don't think about it much, but bent cylinders, nothing gets your UV editor more screwed up than kind of like bent cylinders, especially if it ends up being something like, you know, exhaust pipes on a car, or something that's really complex, has a lot of bends in all directions. And it's because the UV editor can't really get a hold of what's up, what's down, because it's like a roller coaster. It's kind of going all over the place like a wormhole. Now this isn't bad. Again, that is the undistorted version of this. We can hit Control V if we want to relax that a little bit. You'll see you can almost figure out what we're looking at here. This is the back where it's probably the least pinched, and this is the bottom here where it's probably the most pinched, which makes sense. It's bending in there. And if you think about it, if you were to take a toilet paper tube and try and bend it, it's just going to crush. And that's because it's not the same distance on the inside as the outside. So when you're UV mapping it and you're trying to make it flat, you have problems. Probably the same as if somebody's trying to make sleeve on a shirt. You can't really just cut it out of, you know, one piece and have it fit perfect unless you have these kind of odd borders on it. All right, well, let's see how this mapping now works. If let's see if it just works without selecting the quad. Remember last time I selected one of these quads and kind of squared it off? Let's see if this works without that. UV unwrap and follow active quads. Now, there's a couple here again. There's length even and length average. I'll just leave it on length average. Yeah, and there's that error, that no active face. That's what I was looking for. And I don't know why it worked on my last one. Maybe it's just because maybe there was a straightened face on it. Let's see. So let's go to this guy. And let's grab, say, this one. I don't think I can grab two at a time. Can I do this? If I go to weld align, I haven't tried it this way. Let's align to the, I don't know what, the X? No, it's clearly not the X. Let's align to the, there we go. Align to the Y, nah, okay. It's not really going to work for me. Let's do this guy. We'll just hit W here. There we go. And go to X. I'm not kidding, my axis is right here. Y, there we go. Y, X, and X. Oh, that guy. That's interesting. Why did that guy snap? Oh, because we've got both of them, I see. We've got an edge. We're in sync mode. There we go. There we go. And that button. If there's one on my top 10 list of Blender wishes, it would be to clean up that process. I know why it's there, and I don't really mind the back and forth between sync mode. It's just the button doesn't do it for me. I need something a little bit more elegant. Or just get rid of sync mode altogether, but I don't think they could really do that the way Blender's set up. The I am constantly switching between it. Not really my favorite. Okay, so now we've got that. Let's go over here. Now we could select this quad. What I want to see is if this works without selecting it. I'm wondering if it just sees this, because there's something that has been changed here. It acts different. If I go to follow active quads, yeah, see, that's interesting. I don't think it used to do that, where you don't really have to select that quad. Let me make sure that's what we're seeing. Let's select this one last. And maybe it's just because I had it selected last. Yeah, that's what it was. Okay. It didn't change. Nothing changed here. I guess it was something I wasn't aware of. If you select another quad or deselect this, just hit A, it's still, see how it's kind of shaded in there? It's still recognizing that quad as the active one, even if I deselect it. So, yeah, I guess you could see it there. That makes sense. So I don't think anything changed. It was just I didn't used to click on it that way. Or my setup file was a little weird. But now we can just go to, we'll click this one. We'll do it the way I showed you. And then mesh, unwrap, follow active quads. And you just boom, and you're set. And now you can draw straight lines around this. It is more efficient. That's why we used to do this on everything. Back when UV maps really had to be efficient. I'm not sure the behind the scenes part of UV maps, if the empty space just doesn't get drawn nowadays, or if computers have just gotten faster so that it's not as big a deal. But I know that the efficiency doesn't have to be that these are butted up together like they used to be. Not to mention we don't even want them butted up. We want those gaps for the normal map seams to blend a little bit better. But anyways, yeah, follow active quads. It's a neat tool because it's very similar to Max and Maya in how you can quickly unwrap organic objects to get something usable. You can imagine that if this pipe kind of went all over the place, it'd be harder to map. Anyways, don't have to straighten the UVs, but it's a good trick to know. So there you go. Let me hop over here and make sure I didn't miss anybody's question or anything. Yeah, I don't see any questions today. So that's going to do it for today. Now I get to do this all over again and make the video for the Game Institute curriculum. Because I wasn't recording. I forgot to hit the record button. All right, so that's going to do it for today. And I will see. Oh, no, it's not. We're back live again in an hour and a half. You know what? Let me tell you what we're going to be covering. We're going to be covering. Is it rock making? Do we get to see our rock again? Nope. It's Quixel. We're going to be talking more about the presets in Quixel, and I'm going to attempt to be making materials in Quixel on my own. So we'll try that. I've done it once. It should be exciting. So that is today at 11. That's just in an hour and a half. 11 Pacific Standard Time. See y'all then. Bye bye.